Tim, good evening from Athens, and thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for your invitation.
You describe a new multipolar world in which countries now have more choices regarding whom they trade with and whom they form alliances with. Does geography still play the dominant role in this context?
I've always argued it plays one of the dominant roles. It still does. It always will. You look at a whole range of issues and geography will be one of the things that's in them. I'll give you an example. The IMEC, India, Middle East corridor. If it's going to go ahead, you need a map and look where it goes. It goes straight through to Greece. It would be a big economic boon for Greece if it goes ahead. But the reason that Greece is in the IMEC is precisely because of the geographic corridor. It's always, even with technology, technology simply changes sometimes which bits of geography are important. It doesn't mean that geography isn't important, it just changes which bits.
You say that the main difference from the Cold War world is that the United States now here has its attention turned over China. What options does this give to Europe? Can it take care of its own security against Russia, or is there no longer enough time?
We are nowhere near being able to take care of ourselves. If things went worse than I think they're going to go, and NATO collapsed, the Americans pulled out and NATO collapsed, we are at least 5 years away from being able to properly defend ourselves against a theoretical Russian attack. But the way I think it's going to go is that the bullying, you could argue justifiable bullying by the Americans, insisting we pay our way. I know Greece does, but most of us don't. Within NATO, I think is having the desired effect. We are raising our military budgets, and consequently, I think that will keep the Americans in the relationship. But we have to get used to the fact a new era has been born. It's not the Cold War. It's not even the post-Cold War era. It's a new era, the post-Cold War era. And in this time, the Americans are much more focused on the Indo-Pacific. Yes, they will still pay attention to us, but only if we pay our own way. If not, they will go away. And then we'll find out how tough we are.
What do the war in Ukraine and the crisis in the Middle East teach us about the means through which war is now being conducted?
Well, the Ukraine one, more than Israel-Hamas, is to do with drones. Well, and you're showing long-range artillery, but there's a connection here. And again, I go back to geography as one of the major factors. The long-range artillery now strikes 150, 200 miles behind lines. It hits your supply depots and it hits your supply routes. What this has meant is you have to diversify your supply routes and your supply depots. And this is where drones come in. So now you have many, many smaller areas where you assemble your equipment. And then you have many, many drones that then go forward and push the materials to the front lines. It's really, really changed that aspect of war. I don't think that the Hamas-Israeli war is that different to what's gone before. I think Ukraine is the game changer where we woke up to this new form of warfare. I mean, we should have woken up earlier. Those of us that followed it looked at the Azerbaijan-Armenian war 4 years ago, I think, where the Armenian heavy armor was smashed because the Azerbaijanis had spent years preparing and buying drones from Turkey, the Bayraktar, and Armenia was fighting the last war. Azerbaijan was fighting the new war. But I think it's now become to public consciousness because of the shock of Ukraine.
Tim, you often draw parallels with ancient Greek history and the example of Athens and Sparta. Do you believe that a war between the United States and China is inevitable in the next, say, 5 to 10 years period?
No. I've argued consistently it's not inevitable. Of course it's a risk. I've also argued consistently, and please may I be right, so there is no war, but they will not invade Taiwan, certainly not this decade. And that is because although I believe in this new era, it is a form of Cold War. It's very, very different. In the last time, the Russians didn't make anything. Maybe they had a 5-year plan for some tractors. We didn't care. In this new era, where America leads one block of advanced industrialized democracies, not the West, that's a 20th century thought, because now we must include Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, India, who are big enough to take care of themselves, but will mostly side with the United States. They lead this block. China leads the other block. Russia is its junior partner. China has everything that we want to buy, but they must keep making it. If they don't keep making their goods, their factories close, they have mass unemployment. And so if there is a war between these two superpowers of the 21st century, there will be an immediate worldwide recession, starting in the South China Sea, where all the shipping goes through, and going around the world. And that will kill the Chinese economy. And I think that's a massive restraining factor. Also, apart from Taiwan, the Chinese are not particularly trying to gain extra territory. So there's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't fight. There is always a note of caution from history. People said that about Germany and Britain in 1912. Too much economy interlink. But I still think that they can manage this relationship.
Regarding the Eastern Mediterranean, our region, U.S. companies appear increasingly interested in energy exploration. Do you believe that a stronger American presence in our area, in our region, could function as a security anchor for the region?
It would. I mean, this is why I know you have a troubled past with your relationship with the Americans, where there have been decades when a majority of the population is quite anti, and then decades when it's for.
That was back in the 70s and the 80s. The sentiment has
even the 50s, even the 50s, I think. Yeah. But either way, now in the globalized world, and yes, I know globalization has probably peaked, but it's not going away. It's not going to go into massive retreat. And when you look at things like Suda Bay, and when you look at the IMEC corridor, and you look at Greece's strategic position and its position within NATO because of its navy, I think there's a lot of reasons why you need to maintain your relationship with the United States. And the more they're interested in you, then the more investment comes in. And on the security front, the more there is a NATO, and you remain and they remain in NATO, there will always be this massive pressure from the Americans to make sure that you and your Turkish friends do not bump into each other too heavily. So, yeah, I know it is contested, but my view is that I think the Americans are essential for most regions of the world. When they withdraw, there is always a power vacuum, and people try to fill power vacuums. Interesting, you didn't ask me, but I think it's interesting because people need to understand this. People think that this American debate about whether to withdraw to their own hemisphere is something new for the Americans. It isn't. They spent most of their history really trying not to get involved outside of their hemisphere. It was only really from 1944. So this is actually a shorter period that they have been involved everywhere. But I just think that when you look at what happens when they're not involved and the chaos, there's chaos when they are involved, but I think there's more when they're not. It's a very interesting time. The birth of a new era always creates uncertainty. But I think it's important just to understand it's a new time.